Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Be the Vessel, the podcast with me, Daniel, a guide, an intuitive healer, trained psychologist, um, and probably a few other things that I can't think of, but mostly just a person on a healing path like you, here to share some of the wisdom that flows through me for both of us. And today I'm guided to speak to something that is personal to me, something I've been navigating that may also align for you, or maybe something you're curious about or have wondered about on this spiritual or woo path in the realm of angels and guides and spirits and all things that we cannot see, and requires a bit of trust and faith in the practice. And specifically, I'm guided to speak to seeing the signs. You may hear others speak to or see on social media, or various signs that people feel they receive from the spirit realm, encouraging them, supporting them, guiding them, directing them, warning them. And maybe this comes through numbers or the practice of numerology, which is its own sort of framework for, I won't even go into all that, but I think, that can get into personality dynamics and assessing your own, numbers that resonate with you or that are based on your birthday or things like that. But also just seeing numbers, seeing repeated numbers in particular, as one way that spirit tends to communicate, in my opinion. And that's one way that I've tended to see signs. But there are many ways. Maybe a song comes on and a lyric comes through, and it's something your mother said to you years ago, and you just get a sense that she's communicating with you. Or just serendipity and synchronicity. Things happen in a way that just seem too aligned, they just seem to have a mystical quality. You just don't seem to believe that it's just coincidence. But so how do we tell this apart? How do we understand what's being communicated, who's communicating, if something really means anything? Well, one way of starting to walk this path is seeing and believing and trusting, and then just having conviction that there really are no coincidences, that we really are all interconnected, and that there is a universal flow and intelligence, and that there are souls beyond the spirit realm, or beyond the earthly realm, that are attempting to get our attention, that we are guided. If we are open to that, then you just might begin to see things a little differently, and your awareness, your experience of the world may start to shift, may start to expand. It's not that these things were never there before, it's that you may just start to notice them now. Or maybe you noticed them as a child before your childlike, playful, mystical spirit was sort of beaten down and suppressed, and shaped to conform, to listen to more of the prefrontal cortex and the reasoning and logic that, seemingly helps you get through the adult world. But before that, you may have always known that life experience is one big form of communication of the lessons that are meant for us, and that we are always supported and provided for in one way or another. More than, in my experience, more than specific things to look out for, which some may speak to, look out for these kinds of numbers or these kinds of things, feathers, or, a certain certain color or something like that. For me, I'd say it's more about a feeling, a knowing, a sense that what you're perceiving in this instance, in this moment, it's meaningful. Just there's an inner sense that associates to the number you're seeing or the sign or the color or something that a person is saying to you at that time. It just, I think as I've gone down this healing path and opened up to being a child of spirit that we all are, within me grows a sense that, that same spirit can communicate through anything and anyone at any time. And that when a bird flies right by your path, there's a, maybe one time it happens and you don't sense anything. You don't think much of it. Maybe it happens again and you feel something lights up in your energy field. You just wonder, like, I felt something when I felt something when I saw those numbers. One of my current stories, which I share with my mother, is as I prepared to take a big leap and drive across the country and begin a new kind of life for myself, I just started to see the number 38 everywhere. And then the number 338, which is my mother's birth time. But I didn't really know that. I didn't, when I first started seeing the numbers, I wasn't like, oh, I know exactly what that means. There was a sense of knowing that it was meaningful, that I was seeing it for a reason. There's a presence to it. There's a particular presence to it. It's like when you meet a person and you just sense that there could be a deeper kind of connection or relationship here, maybe even a romantic relationship. Maybe you said one word to them, maybe zero words. Maybe you just lock eyes with them and you just know. What is that? What is that knowing? Where's that sense? Are you making it up? No, you're feeling into the energy of a person or the energy of a room. You have a sense, you have an energetic sense. In the world of psychology, we might call this attunement, though, you know, in that clinical world, they don't really explore what that means. They might think about it as emotions, but what are emotions? It's energetic material that we're picking up on because we are energetic beings. So signs are no different. You sense, oh, this feels different. This feels like it's coming to me. And can this go off the rails? Sure. Can we fantasize about everything having meaning and go overboard and think that everything is meant for us and spiral into paranoia and delusion and, sort of diagnoses that probably some people would think all of this falls under. Maybe that all of this is just delusion or grandiosity. That's not for me to challenge or confront. I'm just here to share my experience and what has felt meaningful to me. And repeatedly, like multiple times daily now for better part of 6 months, I've seen that number, my mother's birth time, and specifically the number 38. And then, you can look it up and you can find a collective reservoir of associated meanings, sort of angel or spirit guided meanings that other people have felt divinely guided to share or collectively identify as what they mean. But, I would say take it loosely. The meaning may become clear to you in time. It may be a foreshadowing of something to come. It may be an acknowledgement of the transitional period you're in, a reminder that you are supported when the fears and doubts are particularly heavy that day. It's been all those things for me, sometimes more helpful than others. When I'm feeling aligned, when I'm feeling the divine presence flowing through me, kind of like when you're feeling in love with someone, the numbers or the signs simply amplify it. And though when I'm in doubt, they can provide reassurance. again, it really comes back to an inner knowing, an inner sense. To go back to that example of like finding the right partner, it's like love at first sight. You just knew. And maybe you were wrong, right? Maybe that relationship didn't work out, although you likely learned lessons along the way. It's not to say it wasn't meant to happen just because it didn't work out. And so maybe you see signs or you feel a presence in them and nothing happens in the way that you thought. It's an art, not an algorithm. So a lot of this practice for me is based in what does it amplify within me? Because all of these things, all of these modalities and tools and signs and manifestations and everything that is external to us is only a support for what is internal to us. Everything we can manifest, everything we can connect with, in my opinion, is only to support the conviction that lives within us, that we have all we need, that all is well, that we can trust the present. We can have faith in the present, that we don't need to jump ahead. So for me, seeing signs is about trusting what is unfolding and relinquishing the fears and doubts about what's going to happen and if I should have done something differently in the past. It's an assurance that we're on the right path. And if we're not on the right path, there will likely be multiple signs, not just external, but within. Because we begin to trust an energetic home within us. So signs can be valuable when we're still in this place. And I still love to see signs. I love to be shown things. I love to be reminded because I still have lots and fears of doubts. But ultimately, it's about building that energetic home, that place of trust within. So that with any decision, you can trust the inner sense, the feeling, the knowing within you. And I'm not speaking just to emotions, because emotions are like waves and we're not always meant to trust those, but there's a different kind of energetic feeling that is not the same as those more transitory emotions. And it's hard for me to put words to. But I've begun to notice that certain emotions feel old. They will take me back to childhood or really even before, an ancestral lineage or even, past life karma. And there's a sense to it. You can feel childlike when they present. It can really sort of pull you into the grasp. And slowly you can begin to remember your awareness and ride the wave. Other emotions seem more circumstantial. Now, circumstances are always a synergy between what's in you and what's out of you. But they can feel more of a reactive moment rather than something that's really coming up from the earth, that's maybe a multi-day thing rather than a momentary thing. And then there's a different sense. I say the word feeling, but I don't just mean emotion. So I must be referring to a different kind of energetic presence. Something that's more like a compass, a feelings compass, when you come more deeply into the heart space, the energetic heart space, the chakra. It's like if we are the ocean, you're going a few layers deep. They're not just surface level emotions, they're different feeling sensations in the heart. And that's where we can find more blissful states, more transcendent states. And in that space, learning to trust the heart beyond just passing states of grief and loss and anger and even, happiness. A certain kind of happiness can be more transitory, but a deeper sense of alignment, a deeper sense of bliss, a deeper sense of peace, a deeper sense of knowing, and a deeper sense of knowing when something isn't right. Right? I don't just mean fear, because sometimes old patterns of fear, old conditioning of fear shows up when we're meant to go forth with something and we're meant to summon courage alongside the fear. That's different than, that can be more of a reactive fear of like the ego mind being like, well, it seems like this would be good for you, but I'm scared, In some ways, That's actually a sign that you're going in the right direction, paradoxically, because it's good exposure to work through those fears, to heal them, to release them. So, not that primitive kind of survival fear, scanning for danger and threat, a different kind of knowing that that a certain circumstance, decision, or person, etc., is just not meant for you. That's different. A different kind of discernment. I've heard this word used by other teachers. A different kind of discernment that isn't just based on transitory feeling states or conditioned beliefs, ideally. Though it takes practice because that stuff is wired in. But seeing signs is no different. Maybe this podcast is really just meant to be about discernment. So I don't know. Maybe I'll change the title. But seeing signs is just one area which stems from the discernment within. Otherwise, it gets so stuck in your head. Well, I saw this. It was like a blue feather and it had a number next to it. How do you know what it means? That is it meaningful? Was it meant for me? Was it meant for someone else? All that stuff, that's just thinking headiness. It's not about that. It's not about figuring anything out. When you cross something on your path, when you look down and you see a number that's been accompanying you for a while now, you just know, oh yeah, like a wink. Thank you, Spirit. I see you and you see me. You felt seen and you feel a glimpse beyond the veil. In that moment, a bit closer, a bit more connected to the divine, to the layer beneath this game, or to one layer deeper. That's what signs are all about to me. It's just like horoscopes. I don't need to get into the details of that. Oh, what's going to happen to me on this date? Or that's for the ego mind. And it really only brings suffering because time does not function in the same way in the spiritual realm. So many times I've gotten messages that things are coming to me. And I've attempted to use my intuition and be like, it's got to be this week or this day. It doesn't happen. And I see the medicine of disappointment, let's call it. The medicine of getting too attached to this dependency on being provided things, when really it's about the growth that happens along the way. And yes, I want things to unfold in my life, circumstances to change, abundance to flow, relationships I want all that stuff. But I can look back and see that the ebbs and flows of not always getting it when I wanted to were part of the game, part of the growth, part of the medicine. And maybe I started seeing signs for a while. And then maybe I forgot about it. And then something really big took place in my life, and which has happened. I would see, for example, crows are a very powerful medicine, at least to some, and probably everyone has some different ideas of what they may mean, but I started seeing them everywhere, literally everywhere. And then I found out that they're actually really popular in Santa Barbara. So, take it for what you will. Take it with a grain of salt. But all I can say is I didn't see them before, and I didn't have that sense before. And right before I started seeing them, it was being more talked about. A healer I met with was talking about it. So, can we be open to the idea that when things just come into your consciousness is not random? When a friend or a family member or stranger, or you see something on TV or whatever, when you hear something, when it comes into your consciousness, when your attention is brought to it, that's not random. And that then if that starts happening, people with a more purely logical and reasoning way of seeing the world would say, yes, that's a social psychological phenomenon that, when something is brought to your attention, you just naturally see it more. Okay, that's one way of understanding the principle, one way of understanding, but maybe there's another way of understanding. Maybe both can be true. Maybe that can be true on a strictly brain-based level, but was it random that it all started happening that way? And what is the inner sense? What is the inner sense? What is the inner knowing? And again, like I said, can your compass be off base? Can it be misattuned? Sure. If you're still wrestling with a lot of emotion energy, if you have a more sort of manic personality and you get really excited and you get really, and then you get disappointed. And you're the kind of person who was like, I put everything into this. I was so sure that this was true. And maybe that was the medicine you were meant to learn then. Maybe that was helping you fine tune your tuning fork. I certainly wouldn't interpret that as meaning you're not meant to get excited about things and you're not meant to believe and you're not meant to trust. Certainly not meant to close your heart. But maybe it just needs to become more finely tuned. Maybe there are ways that we can get excited about things that we put too many hopes and dreams into. You know, dreaming can be an interesting phenomenon. Like having dreams is beautiful, right? Like having goals. But if we start to attach to them and feel that things need to unfold, if we put too much anticipation and pressure on a certain fantasy and vision coming true, then they stop becoming dreams and they become more expectations. And that's different because then fear's involved. When fear gets involved, rather than, oh, this is so exciting that this could be brought to me, it becomes, it will be really disappointing if this isn't brought to me. And that reverts from a place of love, awe, and amusement to a place of lack, because the belief then stems from the sense that you're not okay unless you have it, unless you get this thing. And that's really not how spirit works. The universe, universal intelligence flows through us when we practice knowing, not just believing, but knowing that we are already enough, that we already have what we need. And this is just a fun game to participate in, to further our conviction, to see what's possible. And it's tricky. I've made a lot of sacrifices and I took a lot of leaps in the past year, and I threw myself into situations that were messy, and a lot of fear came up, and I was stressed at times. I was kind of guided to do it that way, to jump off the ledge before I could see the bridge, as is often stated. But I think what I've learned along the way is it doesn't have to be stressful. I don't have to throw myself off so many cliffs. Maybe I did that time, that one time, so I could learn. And so I could, I don't know, prove myself in a way, I guess. But even that, I think that was a conditioned belief within me over many lifetimes, that things that I had to suffer through it, that I had to really devote myself. And it does require devotion and commitment, but devotion and commitment are not the same thing as living in fight or flight and feeling like you're putting your life on the line in a way. So it's a dance, learning how to commit to something while also practicing ease and grace, and knowing that even if you're surrendering to a higher authority in spirit or to the messages you receive, that your ultimate guide is within you. It's your compass, it's your energetic home, and you don't have to do things that don't feel aligned for you. That's the ultimate faith. That's the ultimate conviction. Not in this sort of grandiose way that you always know what's best, but that it's a conversation between what you feel you're being guided to and what feels right in the heart space. That, you know, I talk a lot about surrender, and it's so valuable to surrender to something greater and begin to see the unfolding of that, the blessing of that, the relief of that, the excitement and joy of that. While also knowing that surrender is not the same thing as sacrifice. It doesn't mean just throwing yourself into punishing situations. You have a say in the way you want your life to go too. You know, and again, there is a guided path for you. And I've talked about that in relation to free will. I think the freedom is really in the freedom to resist or the freedom to surrender. You can try to make your life look exactly how you want in the ego, but that's not the same thing as trusting the heart space and what's really meant for you. But it's all an art form. It's a dance, and it takes practice, in my opinion. So signs are no different. Signs may come to you in one state of mind or state of being. And you may feel really perplexed, really want to know who's communicating to you. Is it a particular ancestor, a particular guide, or an archangel? Is it nothing? And I've cultivated my own intuitive practice to be able to sort of tune in and hear who might be showing up for me. And I just trust it. If I sense someone, a friend who's passed away, someone in particular who shows up frequently for me, or an ancestor, or just a general supportive message from spirit, I trust that. I trust my knowing because I've practiced with it a lot. And that probably came from the earlier stages of me really throwing myself off the cliff, so to speak, metaphorically, in regard to intuitive knowing and practice. I guess that's just a bit of my personality, but yours doesn't have to go that way. But as a result, I have a lot of trust now in what comes through, though I still get challenged. I think in a former podcast, I was just saying how I was, oh, yes, I definitely was, probably in the manifestation one, about how I had to trust the process because I was practicing calling in this beautiful new home for myself. And I was in a place of like radio silence and I wasn't sure and I was in doubt. And now I can gracefully and excitedly say that it all seems that spirit was providing me a little test so those fears and doubts could show up and release. And then reassured me in the most beautiful way. And I will be visiting this place this Sunday and in all likelihood, be moving to Pasadena, as was always aligned, though I had to go through the journey, the ebb and flow of it. It couldn't happen in the way my thinking mind wanted it to happen, more quickly or with more assurances. I was being asked to surrender to it and trust. And I was challenged. And I may not have been seeing signs so clearly, but then I was. Then one day I decided to go for a hike. I saw a pack of these California condors swirling overhead and started screeching at me. And I just felt this power rise up through me, like I was being communicated to. Did it erase all my fear and doubt? No. Did it help? Yes. So there you have it. All these external bells and whistles, they're there to support us, not necessarily to be relied upon. And that's where we get ourselves into a little bit of stickiness. It's just like people. People are there to support us, not to be relied upon, not fully. It's only you that's meant to be relied upon fully, and your surrender to the greater spirit. It's lovely to be in a world where we can have these relationships with people, places, and things. But I believe it's ultimately about cultivating the inner knowing so that when you see something, you just know, oh, that was meant for me. How do you know? I just do. I just do. Well, that's what I have for you today. Thanks for listening. Take care.